Fort Keller sat like a concrete scar on the Texas landscape, isolated and unforgiving. Morning reveille echoed across barracks, where rumors spread faster than wildfire, and today's target was Sergeant Rachel Winters. 29 years old, shoulders squared despite the weight of accusation, she moved through the base like a ghost haunting her own life. The whispers followed her everywhere: hallways, mess hall, training grounds. Always the same story, twisted and retold until truth became unrecognizable. Heard she left her squad behind in Syria, Private Rodriguez muttered during morning formation. Got 3 guys wounded because she froze up. My buddy from Delta Company said she's been demoted twice, another voice added. Command keeps her around out of pity. The lies had momentum now, rolling downhill like an avalanche. Each retelling added new details, fresh humiliation. The truth, locked away in classified files nobody could access, became irrelevant. Physical training started at 0600. Rope climbing, obstacle courses, endurance runs. Rachel performed each exercise with mechanical precision, but the pack always kept its distance. Invisible barriers constructed from whispered accusations and manufactured disgrace. Need help with that rope, wash out? Corporal Jenkins called out as she prepared for her climb. Wouldn't want you freezing up again? Laughter rippled through the formation. Not cruel exactly, but casual, the worst kind of dismissal. She'd become entertainment, a cautionary tale told through smirks and sideways glances. Rachel said nothing. Never did anymore. Words had failed her during the investigation, twisted into evidence of incompetence. Silence had become armor, though. It offered little protection against the constant barrage of judgment. During equipment inspection, she removed her outer jacket to check gear placement. The movement was routine, automatic, until someone noticed. What's that on your arm? Private Martinez squinted at the exposed skin. A tattoo, black ink forming an intricate symbol partially hidden by dirt and sweat. Geometric patterns surrounding what looked like a phoenix, but wrong somehow. More angular, more purposeful. Military precision carved into flesh. Martinez fumbled for his phone, snapping a quick photo before Rachel could cover up. Within minutes, the image was circulating through group chats and social media. Another piece of evidence in the court of barracks opinion. Lieutenant Thompson, barely 25 and eager to prove himself, caught sight of the symbol during the inspection. Something about it felt familiar, but he couldn't place it. Military iconography wasn't his specialty, and asking questions might reveal his ignorance. Interesting artwork, Sergeant, he said carefully. Personal meaning? Rachel's eyes met his briefly, the first direct contact she'd made with anyone in weeks. Something like that, sir. Her voice carried no emotion, no explanation, just acknowledgement and withdrawal. Thompson nodded awkwardly and moved on, but the image lingered. He'd seen that symbol somewhere before. Something important. Something classified. The morning continued its routine humiliation. Water bottles accidentally thrown in her direction during breaks. Exclusion from group discussions about weekend plans. The subtle but constant reminder that she no longer belonged among soldiers who trusted each other with their lives. During lunch, she sat alone at a corner table, methodically eating MRE components while conversations flowed around her. The isolation was complete now, physical, social, professional. 2 years of distinguished service erased by whispered lies and bureaucratic indifference. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Saw your ink online. Interesting choice. She deleted the message without responding. The tattoo had been meant as a reminder, not a revelation. Some secrets were designed to stay buried, even when the burial threatened to bury their keeper. But secrets have a way of surfacing when least expected. And sometimes, the right person recognizes what others overlook. The past lived in classified folders that ordinary soldiers couldn't access. But Rachel Winters wasn't ordinary. She just couldn't prove it anymore. 80 months earlier, she'd carried a different name, a different identity. Operation Phoenix variant had required complete erasure of official records, transformation into someone who didn't exist on any roster. Tier 6 operations demanded such sacrifices. The Triangle of Death, a region so hostile that maps marked it in red ink. 7 soldiers went in to extract a political prisoner whose existence threatened 3 governments. Intelligence suggested the mission was suicide disguised as strategy, but someone had to try. Her team had been handpicked from special operations units across different branches. No official documentation, no backup support, no rescue protocols. If they failed, they'd simply vanish names, scrub it from records. Families told they died. In training accidents, the insertion had gone perfectly. 12 hours of movement through enemy territory, avoiding patrols and surveillance systems. They'd reached the target facility as planned, extracted the prisoner without detection. Textbook execution. Then the ambush hit. Enemy forces had been waiting, too organized, too well-positioned to be coincidental. Someone had leaked their route, their timing, their objectives. The extraction became a massacre in seconds. 6 soldiers died in the first 30 seconds. Rachel and the prisoner, a journalist whose reporting had exposed war crimes, found themselves pinned behind concrete barriers while automatic weapons shredded everything around them. She'd had 2 choices: abandon the mission and save herself, or complete the extraction against impossible odds. She chose impossibility. 3 hours of urban warfare, moving between destroyed buildings, using smoke and debris for cover. Carrying a wounded journalist who couldn't walk, couldn't fight, could barely breathe. Her radio was destroyed, her backup weapons lost, her chances of survival approaching 0. But she'd gotten him out, delivered him to the secondary extraction point where a helicopter waited, watched him fly to safety while she provided covering fire from a rooftop that was falling apart under enemy bombardment. The helicopter couldn't return for her. Too much heat, too much risk. She'd understood, even given the order herself. Some missions require acceptable losses, except she hadn't been lost. 4 days later, she'd walked across the border into friendly territory. Dehydrated, wounded, but alive. The debriefing lasted 6 hours. Every detail recorded, analyzed, classified at the highest levels. Then came the bureaucratic nightmare. Operation Phoenix variant had never officially existed. The prisoner they'd rescued couldn't be publicly acknowledged. The soldiers who died couldn't be properly honored. And Rachel's heroism couldn't be recognized without revealing state secrets. Instead, she'd been reassigned to Fort Keller with a manufactured disciplinary record. Tactical errors resulting in friendly casualties. Enough truth to be plausible. Enough lies to destroy her reputation. Now she mopped floors and organized supply closets while soldiers who'd never seen combat questioned her competence. The irony was suffocating, punished for success that couldn't be revealed, degraded for saving lives that couldn't be acknowledged. In the supply warehouse, she discovered an old map collection scheduled for disposal. Military cartography from various operations, most outdated and declassified. But one map made her pause. Grid coordinates marked with symbols that matched her tattoo. The same geometric patterns, the same angular phoenix. Operational markers from missions that officially never happened. She photographed the map, sent it to a secure number from memory. They still don't recognize the emblem, she typed. How long do I wait? The response came quickly. Patience? Truth has momentum. Let it build. But patience was becoming expensive. Each day brought fresh humiliation, new reasons for decent soldiers to doubt her worth. The whisper campaign had evolved into accepted fact. She was damaged goods. A cautionary tale about what happened when soldiers cracked under pressure. That afternoon, a group of young privates had followed her into the warehouse with phones recording. Making TikTok videos, they called it. Content creation at her expense. "Hey, washout," one called. "Show us how you abandoned your squad again." They knocked over supply crates, spilled lubricant on her uniform, laughed as she silently cleaned up their mess. The videos would be online within hours, tagged with hashtags that would ensure maximum humiliation. Lieutenant Thompson watched from the doorway, conflicted. He'd received orders not to interfere with disciplinary actions, but this felt wrong. More than wrong, criminal. But speaking up meant career suicide. Questioning popular opinion about Rachel Winters was professional death. So he stood silent, watching a soldier endure treatment that violated every principle he'd sworn to uphold. That night, he researched the symbol from her tattoo. Military databases, historical archives, classified reference materials, his security clearance barely covered. Hours of searching produced fragments references to operations that didn't exist. Units that had no records, missions accomplished by ghosts. The pieces were starting to connect, but the picture they formed was impossible to believe. General Raymond Collins' inspection tours were legendary for their unpredictability. 40 years of military service had taught him that problems hid in comfortable routines, and comfort was the enemy of readiness. Fort Keller hadn't expected him for another 6 months. His unannounced arrival sent the base into controlled chaos, hastily organized formations, rapid equipment checks, desperate attempts to present perfection on zero notice. Rachel wasn't invited to participate. Supply personnel rarely appeared. In official inspections, especially those with disciplinary problems, she continued her warehouse duties while the rest of the base prepared for scrutiny. But General Collins didn't inspect according to protocols. He wandered, observed, asked uncomfortable questions. Military experience had taught him that truth lived in shadows, not spotlights. His path through the base was random, unscripted. Past motor pools and training facilities, through administrative buildings and storage areas. Each stop revealed something new about the base's actual condition versus its reported status. The warehouse was supposed to be empty during the inspection. Rachel worked alone, organizing supplies for an upcoming training exercise. Her movements were efficient, practiced, someone who understood military logistics despite her current assignment. General Collins noticed her through the open bay door. Something about her posture, her precision, caught his attention. Professional soldiers moved differently than clerks playing dress-up. This woman carried herself like someone who'd seen real combat. He approached quietly, observing her work. Inventory management wasn't glamorous, but she performed it with the same attention to detail that marked elite operators. Every item properly cataloged, every procedure correctly followed. Then she reached for supplies on the high shelf, her sleeve pulling back to reveal the tattoo. Collins froze. The symbol was unmistakable geometric patterns surrounding an angular phoenix, rendered in black ink with military precision. He'd seen it before, in briefing rooms where even generals needed special clearance. Operations so classified they existed only in whispered conversations and locked filing cabinets. "Sergeant," he called, his voice carrying absolute authority. Rachel turned, snapping to attention with reflexes that betrayed her true training. This wasn't warehouse personnel, this was a soldier responding to command presence. "Where did you get that emblem?" His question cut through 2 years of imposed silence. For the first time since her reassignment, Rachel looked directly at a superior officer. Her voice was steady, certain. "Tier 6, Phoenix variant, 7 men in, 1 out." The warehouse fell silent. Even the distant sounds of base activity seemed to pause as if the universe itself was holding its breath. Colin's expression shifted from curiosity to recognition to something approaching awe. He'd read about Phoenix variant in briefings so classified that discussing them outside secured facilities was treason. The mission that had saved a journalist whose reporting prevented a war, accomplished by soldiers whose names couldn't be spoken. Lieutenant Thompson. He barked to the young officer who'd been following the inspection tour. Bring me this soldier's file, not the standard personnel record, the black archive. Thompson stammered acknowledgement and rushed away, mind racing. Black archive meant intelligence operations, classified missions, the kind of records that normal officers never saw. Word spread through the base faster than digital communication. The general had recognized something in the washout's tattoo. Soldiers who'd spent months mocking her competence suddenly found reasons to be elsewhere, avoiding potential association with their previous judgments. Within an hour, Thompson returned with a file folder marked with security classifications he'd never seen before. General Collins read in silence, his expression growing darker with each page. The truth was devastating in its simplicity. Rachel Winters was a decorated special operations soldier whose actual service record had been buried to protect state secrets. Her supposed failure was manufactured cover, designed to explain her reassignment without revealing classified operations. But the cover story had taken on its own life. Officers who should have known better had accepted the lies, perpetuated them, used them to justify treatment that violated every principle of military justice. Sergeant Winters. General Collins' voice carried across the warehouse. Please, approach. She moved with the controlled precision of someone approaching a superior officer, not the hesitant shuffle of a disgraced soldier. Everything about her bearing screamed confidence, dedication, honor. I owe you an apology, Collins said, his words carrying to every soldier within earshot. This institution owes you an apology. We failed to protect your name while you protected our secrets. The crowd of observers, soldiers who gathered despite orders to maintain distance, stirred uneasily. Their comfortable assumptions were crumbling in real time, replaced by uncomfortable truths about judgment, prejudice, and the courage required to endure both. Lieutenant Thompson stepped forward, his young face flushed with shame. Sir, I witnessed harassment that should have been stopped. I should have investigated, should have questioned. You should have trusted a fellow soldier, Collins interrupted. All of you should have. Cell phone videos from the warehouse incident were already circulating online, showing Rachel enduring humiliation while officers stood by. The footage was damning clear evidence of systematic failure to protect one of their own. By evening, the story had exploded across social media. Military justice advocates, veterans organizations, and civilian supporters demanded accountability. The military's treatment of a decorated hero became a national scandal within hours. But for Rachel, standing in that warehouse while truth finally emerged from shadows, the vindication felt hollow. Her reputation was restored, but the cost 2 years of isolation, humiliation, and silence couldn't be undone. Some victories came too late to matter. Or perhaps they mattered more because of the delay. The formal ceremony took place 3 weeks later in a conference room where classified operations were planned and executed. No cameras, no media, no public recognition, just truth acknowledged in the shadows where it belonged. General Collins read from official documentation that had been sealed for 2 years. Sergeant First Class Rachel Winters demonstrated exceptional valor during Operation Phoenix variant, directly saving the life of a high-value asset while under enemy fire. Her actions prevented international conflict and upheld the highest traditions of military service. Rachel stood at attention, dress uniform perfect, despite her reluctance to participate. She'd requested no ceremony, no restored rank, no public vindication. Some wounds healed better without exposure. But the military needed this moment. Institutional failure demanded institutional acknowledgement, even if delivered quietly. Your service record is hereby corrected, Collins continued. All disciplinary actions are expunged. Your actual decorations are restored, including the Defense Superior Service Medal and Bronze Star with Valor device. The medals felt heavy in her hands, not from their weight, but from their cost. 2 years of silence, humiliation, and isolation. The price of protecting secrets that others took for granted. Lieutenant Thompson had requested permission to speak. His voice shook as he addressed her directly. Sergeant Winters, I witnessed harassment that I should have stopped. I failed my duty as an officer and as a human being. I formally apologize and request any disciplinary action you deem appropriate. She looked at him, really looked, for the first time since that day in the warehouse. Young, earnest, carrying guilt that would follow him for years. Learning lessons that would make him a better leader, assuming he didn't let shame destroy his effectiveness. Apology accepted, Lieutenant. Learn from this. Protect soldiers who can't protect themselves. Her words carried no anger, no demand for punishment. Just weary acceptance and hope that something positive might emerge from institutional failure. The ceremony concluded with orders that surprised everyone. Instead of returning to special operations or transferring to a different base, Rachel had requested assignment to the Warrior Transition Unit, helping soldiers recover from physical and psychological wounds sustained in combat. General Collins had initially resisted. Sergeant, your skills are wasted in medical support. Special Operations Command wants you back immediately. With respect, sir, I've spent 2 years learning what it means to be abandoned by the system. That experience has value. He'd approved the transfer, recognizing wisdom in her choice. Sometimes the best healers were those who'd survived their own injuries. The public response to her story, leaked despite military attempts at secrecy, was overwhelming. Social media campaigns demanding accountability, congressional inquiries into military justice procedures, policy changes designed to prevent similar failures. Corporal Jenkins, who'd mocked her rope-climbing abilities, sent a handwritten letter to her new assignment. His words were carefully chosen, painfully honest. Sergeant Winters, I called you a washout when you were actually a hero. I don't expect forgiveness, but I want you to know that your story changed how I see courage. Real courage isn't charging into battle. It's enduring injustice while protecting others who can't protect themselves. Thank you for that lesson. She didn't respond to the letter, but she kept it. Not as vindication, but as evidence that people could grow, change, learn from their failures. Open written form. The Silent Emblem Project launched 6 months. Later, a military-wide initiative to identify and honor soldiers whose service had been classified beyond recognition. Hundreds of cases emerged from shadows, stories of sacrifice hidden by necessity but lost to bureaucracy. Each soldier received their due recognition, their records corrected, their families finally told why their loved ones had disappeared into black operations. Justice delayed, but not denied. Rachel's tattoo became an unofficial symbol of the project. Military personnel began sharing photos of their own classified service markers, unit patches, commemorative coins, personal reminders of missions that couldn't be discussed. But perhaps the most significant change was cultural. Fort Keller implemented new policies protecting soldiers under disciplinary review, mandatory training on unconscious bias, anonymous reporting systems for harassment. Lieutenant Thompson, promoted after his honest testimony about institutional failures, became an advocate for military justice reform. His career recovered and flourished, built on lessons learned from witnessing courage under fire. The transformation wasn't complete or perfect. Institutional change moved slowly, fought against decades of ingrained assumptions. But progress began with recognition, acknowledging that heroes didn't always look like expectations. Some victories were measured in restored reputations. Others were measured in prevented future failures. Both mattered. 1 year later, the Winter's Legacy Training Program opened at the Special Warfare Center. The course logo featured an angular phoenix rising from geometric patterns, the same symbol that had ended 2 years of institutional blindness. Lieutenant Colonel Thompson, now commanding the Ethics Training Division, addressed the first class of students. Young officers from every branch, learning lessons that hadn't existed in previous curricula. "This course exists because we failed," he began. "We failed to recognize excellence disguised as failure. We failed to question convenient assumptions. We failed to protect those who'd already sacrificed everything to protect us." The students, lieutenants, and captains mostly shifted uncomfortably. Military education typically focused on success stories, not institutional failures. This approach was revolutionary and necessary. Sergeant First Class Winters chose not to teach this course personally, Thompson continued. She said her story matters less than the lesson it teaches. Character isn't revealed in moments of glory. It's forged in moments of abandonment. The curriculum was comprehensive, recognizing unconscious bias, protecting subordinates from institutional failure, maintaining moral courage when popular opinion contradicted evidence. Each module built on real cases, documented failures, prevented disasters. Word spread through military networks. Other services requested similar programs. Congressional committees demanded expansion. What began as acknowledgement of one's soldiers' mistreatment became systematic reform of military justice culture. Meanwhile, Rachel had quietly disappeared from public attention. Requests for interviews were declined. Speaking engagements refused. She'd found her mission in shadows, working with veterans whose wounds came from classified operations that couldn't be discussed. The Transition Center operated outside official channels, private funding, word-of-mouth referrals, invisible to government databases. Like the missions that had created its clients, it existed in shadows. Necessary, effective, deliberately hidden. Veterans found her through networks that operated in darkness. Recommendations from people who understood the cost of serving, where medals couldn't be awarded and sacrifices couldn't be acknowledged. The center offered no miracle cures or revolutionary treatments. Just understanding, acceptance, practical support from someone who'd survived similar isolation. Sometimes, that was enough. A young woman arrived one afternoon, Army Ranger, early 20s, carrying the same haunted expression that Rachel recognized in mirrors. Her service record was clean, her references impeccable, but something in her eyes suggested deeper wounds. "I heard about your story online," the woman said during intake, "about how you survived being judged for something people couldn't understand. I think I need that kind of understanding." Rachel didn't respond immediately. Instead, she rolled up her sleeve, revealing the tattoo that had started everything, not as boast or proof, but as connection. One survivor acknowledging another. "Tell me what you can't tell anyone else," she said. That evening, as autumn settled over the Colorado mountains, Rachel sat with other veterans around a fire pit behind the center. They shared stories that would never appear in official records, acknowledged sacrifices that couldn't be publicly recognized. These conversations happened every night in formal therapy sessions disguised as social gatherings. Veterans who'd served in classified operations, whose heroism remained hidden, whose wounds couldn't be explained to families or friends. They found healing in shared understanding, strength in mutual recognition. The silence that had once isolated them became a bond that connected them. A text arrived on her secure phone from an unknown number. "New case incoming. Navy SEAL 3. Deployments to places that don't exist. Story sounds familiar." She typed back quickly. "Room available. Send coordinates when ready." The center operated on word-of-mouth referrals and private funding, invisible to government databases or official recognition. Like the missions that had created its clients, it existed in shadows, necessary, effective, deliberately hidden. But its impact spread far beyond Colorado. Veterans who found healing there returned to their communities stronger, more resilient, better equipped to handle civilian life. Their recovery rippled outward, affecting families, employers, entire support networks. Late that night, after the fire had died to embers and other residents had gone to bed, Rachel walked the perimeter of the property. Old habits from military service, checking security, ensuring safety. The mountain air was clean, quiet, free from the constant tension of military bases. Here she could finally breathe without feeling watched, judged, evaluated against standards designed by people who'd never faced impossible choices. Her phone buzzed one final time. A message from General Collins, now retired but still maintaining contact with soldiers whose stories mattered. Saw the news about your center. Congressional hearing next month about military justice reform. Your testimony could change everything. She considered the message for several minutes before responding. I serve better in shadows. Let the reforms speak for themselves. Some victories were public celebrated, remembered in history books. Others were private, personal, measured in lives quietly saved and dignity silently restored. Both had value. Both mattered. The tattoo on her arm caught moonlight, geometric patterns seeming to shift in the darkness. A symbol of sacrifice, endurance, and ultimately triumph. Not over enemies, but over the systems that had failed to recognize her worth. Tomorrow would bring new clients, fresh challenges, different battles against invisible wounds. But tonight, surrounded by mountains and silence and the knowledge that she'd found her true mission, Rachel Winters was exactly where she belonged. In the shadows, where heroes did their finest work. The Hart Senate office building buzzed with activity as the Armed Services Committee prepared for its hearing on military justice reform. Senator Patricia Manning, chair of the Personnel Subcommittee, had spent months building the case for systematic change. Today, we examine failures in our military justice system, she announced to packed galleries. Failures that allowed a decorated war hero to be systematically abused while protecting state secrets. Lieutenant Colonel Thompson sat at the witness table, uniform pressed, testimony prepared. Beside him, General Collins reviewed classified documents that had been cleared for limited public discussion. Colonel Thompson, Senator Manning began. You witnessed Sergeant Winters' treatment firsthand. Describe what you saw. Thompson's voice was steady, professional. Senator, I observed systematic harassment of a soldier whose actual service record was classified beyond my clearance level. I failed to investigate because I accepted convenient assumptions rather than questioning institutional narrative. What changed your perspective? General Collins recognized classified markings that revealed Sergeant Winters' true record. She wasn't a failed soldier. She was a decorated Special Operations veteran whose heroism had been buried to protect state secrets. Senator David Richardson, ranking minority member, leaned forward. Colonel, isn't it possible that classification was used to cover up actual failures? General Collins interrupted before Thompson could respond. Senator, with respect, I've reviewed the complete classified file. Sergeant Winters saved lives during an operation that prevented international conflict. Her supposed disciplinary problems were manufactured to explain her reassignment without revealing classified activities. Can you provide specifics? Not in open session, sir. But the committee can review classified details in executive session. The hearing continued for 6 hours. Testimony from military justice experts, veterans advocates, former special operations personnel. Each witness built the case that institutional culture had failed to protect soldiers whose service couldn't be publicly acknowledged. Senator Manning called for a 10-minute recess, then made an unexpected announcement. The committee has received a written statement from Sergeant First Class Rachel Winters. She declined to appear in person but provided testimony that has been cleared for public release. The statement was brief, powerful. Honorable Senators, I don't seek public vindication or sympathy. I seek systematic change that prevents future soldiers from enduring what I experienced. Military service requires trust that the institution will protect those who sacrifice to protect others. When that trust breaks down, it endangers everyone who serves. My case isn't unique. Hundreds of soldiers serve in classified operations where their heroism can't be acknowledged. They deserve protection from institutional failure, not punishment for institutional convenience. I respectfully request that you focus not on my individual case, but on preventing similar failures in the future. Some battles are won in shadows. Others are won in hearing rooms like this one. Thank you for your service to our nation. The statement was read into the record without comment, but its impact was immediate. Social media exploded with support. Veterans organizations demanded action. Editorial boards across the country called for reform. Senator Manning announced the committee's preliminary recommendations that afternoon. Mandatory bias training for all officers, independent review boards for disciplinary actions involving classified personnel, protection for soldiers whose service records were classified for national security reasons. This hearing represents institutional acknowledgement of institutional failure, she concluded. We failed Sergeant Winters. We cannot fail the next soldier who serves in shadows to protect us all. The reforms passed both houses of Congress within 6 months, signed into law by a president who understood the cost of military service. Implementation began immediately. New training programs, revised policies, cultural changes designed to prevent future Rachel Winters cases. Lieutenant Colonel Thompson was promoted to full colonel, assigned to lead the new Military Justice Reform Office. His first directive established anonymous reporting systems for harassment of personnel under disciplinary review. We will not judge soldiers by convenient assumptions, he announced at his first staff meeting. We will protect those who protect us, even when their service can't be publicly acknowledged. The cultural change was slow but measurable. Fort Keller became a model base for military justice procedures. Other installations requested training programs. What had begun as individual tragedy became systematic improvement. General Collins, now working as a civilian consultant on military ethics, received updates on Rachel's transition center. The facility had expanded, serving veterans from every branch and every classified conflict. She found her true mission, he told colleagues during a Pentagon briefing. Sometimes the best leaders are those who choose to serve in shadows rather than seeking spotlight. The Congressional hearing had achieved its purpose, not justice for one soldier, but prevention of injustice for future soldiers. Rachel's story became catalyst for change, proof that individual courage could create institutional transformation. But the real victory wasn't legislative or administrative. It was cultural and military that learned to question assumptions, protect the vulnerable, and honor service even when that service couldn't be publicly celebrated. 5 years after the warehouse confrontation, Rachel stood before a different kind of formation. 23 veterans, men and women who'd served in operations that officially never existed, graduates of her transition program preparing to return to civilian life. You came here broken, she told them, her voice carrying across the Colorado meadow where they'd gathered for their final ceremony. Not broken by enemies, but broken by the systems that failed to protect you after you protected them. The group included former Navy SEALs, Army Rangers, Air Force Special Operations, Marines from classified units. Each carried invisible wounds. From visible service, Scars from missions that couldn't be discussed with families or friends. Today you leave here whole, Rachel continued. Not because your wounds have disappeared, but because you've learned to carry them with purpose. Marcus Williams, former Delta Force operator who'd arrived 6 months earlier, unable to sleep without nightmares, stepped forward representing his class. Ma'am, we came here because we heard about a soldier who survived being abandoned by her own people. You showed us that survival isn't enough. We have to help others survive too. The ceremony was simple, private, invisible to official records. No media, no government representatives, no public recognition. Just acknowledgement among people who understood the cost of serving in shadows. Each graduate received a small pin geometric pattern surrounding an angular phoenix crafted by a jeweler who'd never asked about their meaning. Symbols of transformation, endurance, service, continuing in different forms. That evening, Rachel received a call from Colonel Thompson, now commanding the new Military Ethics Command at the Pentagon. The latest statistics are encouraging. He reported, harassment complaints at bases with your training program have dropped 60%. Anonymous reporting has increased 300%. Soldiers are speaking up when they see injustice. Good, Rachel replied. What about the Silent Emblem Project? Over 400 soldiers identified and honored. Their families finally know why their loved ones carried classified service records. Some wounds are healing. The conversation continued for 20 minutes. Two soldiers who'd learned different lessons from the same institutional failure. Thompson had chosen the path of public service, working within the system to prevent future Rachel Winters cases. Rachel had chosen the path of private service, healing wounds that the system couldn't acknowledge. Both paths mattered. Both created change. After the call, Rachel walked to her office and opened the letter that had arrived that morning. Handwritten, careful script, return address showing Fort Keller, Texas. Sergeant Winters, you don't know me, but I know your story. I'm a young lieutenant assigned to Fort Keller, where they still tell your story during officer training. Not as a cautionary tale about failed soldiers, but as inspiration about institutional courage. I wanted you to know that things have changed here. The warehouse where your truth was revealed has been converted into a learning center for military justice training. Your photo hangs in the hallway, not the staged portrait from your official file, but the candid shot of you standing next to General Collins the day he recognized your tattoo. Soldiers who serve here now understand that heroism takes many forms. Sometimes it's charging enemy positions. Sometimes it's enduring institutional failure while protecting others who can't protect themselves. Thank you for showing us what real courage looks like. Lieutenant Jessica Martinez, 2nd Infantry Division. Rachel folded the letter carefully, placed it in a file drawer with hundreds of others. Letters from soldiers who'd learned her story, veterans who'd found inspiration. In her example, family members who finally understood why their loved ones had served in classified operations. She'd never responded to any of them. Her story mattered less than the lessons it taught, the changes it created, the future soldiers it protected. A secure phone buzzed with a familiar message pattern. New case incoming. Marine Corps. 2. Deployments classified above your clearance. Severe PTSD. Family estrangement. System failure. Standard story. She typed back. Room available. Send coordinates. The center had expanded to serve over 300 veterans annually, funded by anonymous donations from sources that didn't officially exist. Former clients who'd found success in civilian life, military contractors who understood the cost of classified service, government officials who couldn't publicly acknowledge the need but privately supported the mission. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, fresh wounds, different battles against invisible injuries. But tonight, surrounded by Colorado's silence and the knowledge that change was rippling outward, in ways she'd never see. Rachel Winters understood that some victories were measured not in medals or recognition, but in lives quietly saved and dignity silently restored. The tattoo on her arm had become more than a symbol of classified service. It represented transformation from victim to survivor, from isolated soldier to healing leader, from individual tragedy to institutional change. Her true mission had never been special operations or classified service. It had been this, proving that courage could survive abandonment, that dignity could endure humiliation, that individual strength could create systematic change. In the distance, lights from the center's main building cast warm glow across the mountain landscape. Veterans who'd arrived broken were learning to live whole. The cycle continued healing, leading to helping, survival-enabling service. Some battles were fought in enemy territory. Others were fought in congressional hearing rooms or military courtrooms or Colorado meadows, where broken soldiers learned to be whole again. All of them mattered. All of them required courage. And all of them, ultimately, were won by people willing to serve in shadows, seeking not recognition, but results. 10 years had passed since General Collins first recognized the classified emblem on Rachel's arm. The military had transformed in ways both visible and invisible, shaped by lessons learned from institutional failure and individual courage. Rachel stood in her office at the Transition Center, now expanded to serve veterans from conflicts that spanned decades. The walls displayed no official photographs or government certificates, just handwritten letters from soldiers whose lives had been changed by finding understanding in unexpected places. A knock on her door interrupted her morning review of new case files. Colonel Thompson entered, now wearing the star of a brigadier general, carrying a folder marked with familiar classification symbols. Official business? Rachel asked, noting his formal bearing. Semi-official, Thompson replied, setting the folder on her desk. The Pentagon wants to offer you something. Inside the folder were orders assigning her to lead a new Department of Defense program, Classified Service Advocacy Office. A formal position with government backing, official recognition, substantial budget. They want me to go public, she said, understanding immediately. Congressional Appropriations Committee approved funding for systematic support of veterans whose service can't be publicly acknowledged. They want you to run it. Rachel closed the folder without reading the details. What do you think I should do? Thompson sat down, his general's star catching afternoon sunlight through the office window. 10 years ago, I was a lieutenant who watched institutional failure because I was afraid to question authority. You taught me that real leadership sometimes means refusing the spotlight. Rachel walked to the window, looking out at veterans working in the center's garden, a therapeutic program that had grown from informal activity to structured treatment. Former special operations soldiers growing vegetables alongside former intelligence operatives, finding peace in simple tasks that connected them to life rather than death. How many soldiers would this official program serve? She asked. Conservative estimate? 3,000 annually. Full budget, government backing, official recognition for work you're already doing. And the cost? Thompson understood her question. Official programs came with oversight, bureaucracy, political considerations. The Transition Center's strength lay in its invisibility private funding, word-of-mouth referrals, freedom to help soldiers without government approval or paperwork. You'd have to testify before Congress quarterly, report metrics, justify expenditures, coordinate with existing veteran services. Everything you've avoided for the past decade. Rachel turned back to face him. What's the real reason there? Offering this? The center's reputation has spread through classified channels. Government officials whose children serve in special operations know about this place. They want to scale your success, make it official policy. And if I refuse, they'll create the program anyway. Find someone else to run it, probably less effectively. Your model becomes government template whether you participate or not. The decision carried weight beyond personal preference. Official recognition meant resources, reach, ability to help more veterans. But it also meant compromising the intimate, private atmosphere that made healing possible. Her secure phone buzzed with a familiar patent new case incoming. This one marked urgent, requiring immediate response. Marine Corps Force Reconnaissance, she read aloud. 3 tours classified beyond congressional oversight. Severe trauma, family abandonment, institutional isolation. Sound familiar? Thompson nodded grimly. How long until he arrives? Transport lands in 2 hours. Rachel looked at the government. Offer again, then placed it in a desk drawer. I need to think about this. But first, she had a soldier to save. The helicopter touched down on the center's landing pad as the sun set behind Colorado peaks. Rachel watched through her office window as 2 Marines escorted a 3rd man across the grass. Even at distance, she could see the familiar sign's rigid posture masking internal collapse, eyes scanning for threats that existed only in memory. The careful distance maintained between the escort and their charge. Staff Sergeant Miguel Rodriguez was 28 years old, according to his intake file. 6 years of service, the last 4 in operations that officially never happened. His breakdown had occurred during a family gathering when his nephew fired. A toy gun that sounded too much like automatic weapons fire. The response had been instinctive, immediate, devastating. Rodriguez had tackled his 5-year-old nephew, covered him with his body, screamed for everyone to take cover from an attack that existed only in traumatic memory. The family video went viral before anyone realized what they were watching. Decorated Marine having a psychological breakdown at a children's birthday party. Military medicine had tried medication, traditional therapy, extended leave. Nothing worked. Rodriguez couldn't explain to his family why their barbecue had become a combat zone in his mind. He couldn't describe missions that remained classified. He couldn't process trauma from experiences that officially never occurred. Rachel met him at the center's entrance, noting details that others might miss. The way he positioned himself with his back to walls, never fully turning away from exit. Roots. The hypervigilance disguised as casual observation. The controlled breathing of someone fighting constant anxiety. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez, she said, offering a handshake that he accepted with military precision. Welcome to the center. Ma'am, thank you for accepting my case. I know space is limited. His voice carried exhaustion deeper than physical. Fatigue, the weariness of someone who'd carried impossible burdens for too long. Rachel recognized it immediately, remembered feeling the same crushing weight during her darkest days at Fort Keller. Miguel, she said, using his first name to signal that formal military hierarchy didn't apply here. You're safe. You're among people who understand. Most importantly, you don't have to explain anything you can't explain. The intake process was deliberately simple. Personal history that could be discussed. Medical information that wasn't classified. Treatment goals that acknowledged the limitations of serving in shadows. No detailed mission debriefs. No pressure to reveal classified information. No judgment. About psychological responses to experiences that couldn't be shared. That evening, Miguel joined other residents around the fire pit behind the main building. The conversation was casual sports, weather, memories from before military service. No war stories, no mission analysis, no comparisons of combat experience, but understanding passed between them anyway. Subtle recognition of shared experience, mutual acknowledgement of wounds that couldn't be explained to people who hadn't carried similar burdens. Rachel watched from her office window as Miguel gradually relaxed, his hypervigilance decreasing as he realized he was surrounded by others who'd faced similar challenges. The healing process had begun not with therapy or medication, but with simple human connection among people who understood. Her secure phone rang. General Collins, calling from his Pentagon consulting office. "Heard about the government offer," he said without preamble. "Congratulations. Well-deserved recognition. I haven't accepted yet." Smart. Official programs come with unofficial complications. Political oversight, budget battles, bureaucratic interference. Everything that makes government inefficient. Rachel leaned back in her chair, watching Miguel share quiet conversation with other veterans around the fire. "What would you do?" "Same thing you're going to do. Trust your instincts. You've spent 10 years proving that some problems are solved better in shadows than in spotlights." The call ended, leaving Rachel alone with her decision. Through the window, she could see the evening's informal therapy session continuing around the fire pit. Veterans sharing stories they couldn't tell their families, processing trauma with people who understood the cost of classified service. Miguel had already integrated into the group, contributing to conversations about civilian life, asking questions about managing symptoms that he couldn't explain to medical professionals without security clearances. This was what the center did best: created community among people who'd been isolated by the nature of their service. Government programs could provide resources, but they couldn't replicate the intimate understanding that existed between people who carried similar secrets. Rachel opened her laptop and began typing a response to the Pentagon offer. The words came easily, shaped by 10 years of learning what worked and what didn't in treating invisible wounds. "Thank you for the opportunity to serve in an official capacity. However, I respectfully decline the position. The work we do here is most effective when conducted outside official channels, away from political considerations and bureaucratic oversight. Instead, I propose a partnership. The center will continue operating as a private facility, serving veterans whose cases are too sensitive for traditional programs. The government can provide indirect support through funding mechanisms that preserve our operational independence. Some missions are accomplished better in shadows. This is one of them." She sent the message, then walked outside to join the veterans around the fire pit. Miguel looked up as she approached, offering a slight smile, the first genuine expression she'd seen from him since his arrival. "Ma'am, the others were telling me about the garden project," he said. "Growing food. After spending years doing other things. It sounds like something I'd like to try." "Tomorrow morning," Rachel replied. "We start early, before the heat gets too intense." The conversation continued around the fire, stories of civilian careers and family relationships gradually replacing the military experiences that had defined their identities for so long. Healing measured not in dramatic breakthroughs, but in quiet moments of connection, understanding, hope. Later that night, after the other veterans had returned to their rooms, Rachel sat alone by the dying fire. Her secure phone showed 17 new messages: veterans requesting admission, government officials offering partnership opportunities, journalists seeking interviews about her story. She deleted them all without reading the details. Some stories were more powerful when they remained partially hidden, their impact measured not in public recognition, but in private transformation. 10 years ago, she'd been a disgraced soldier, enduring systematic humiliation while protecting secrets that others couldn't understand. Tonight, she was exactly where she belonged in the shadows, helping other soldiers transform their own suffering into service. The tattoo on her arm caught. Firelight, geometric patterns seeming to shift in the darkness. No longer just a symbol of classified service, it had become something more, a reminder that true victory wasn't always public, that real heroism often occurred in shadows, that the most important battles were sometimes fought one wounded soldier at a time. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, fresh cases, different opportunities to transform individual trauma into collective healing. But tonight, Surrounded by Colorado's silence and the knowledge that change continued rippling outward in ways she'd never see, Rachel Winters understood that some legacies were built not in headlines or history books, but in the quiet moments when broken people learned to be whole again. The center would continue its work private, effective, invisible to official recognition, but essential to the soldiers who needed understanding more than publicity. Government programs would handle cases that could be publicly acknowledged. The center would serve those whose wounds came from missions that officially never happened. Both approaches mattered. Both served essential purposes. And both, ultimately, honored the sacrifice of soldiers who'd given everything to protect others, asking nothing in return except the understanding that some service could never be fully acknowledged, only quietly honored by those who truly understood its cost. In the distance, lights from the main building cast warm glow across the mountain landscape. Inside, 23 veterans slept peacefully, perhaps for the first time in years. Tomorrow, they would continue healing. Next week, some would return to civilian life, carrying tools and understanding that would help them succeed where traditional programs had failed. The cycle would continue healing, leading to helping, survival enabling service, individual transformation, creating collective change. No medals, no parades, no public recognition. Just the quiet satisfaction of knowing that some battles were won not through dramatic victory, but through patient, persistent, private commitment to helping others find their way home. Some victories were measured in headlines. Others were measured in nightmares that stopped, families that reunited, soldiers who learned that their wounds didn't define their worth. Rachel Winters had found her true mission 10 years ago in a Bachelwin warehouse at Fort Keller, when a general recognized a classified emblem and truth finally emerged from shadows. But the mission wasn't vindication or recognition. It was this: proving that courage could survive abandonment, that dignity could endure humiliation, that individual strength could create systematic change, one wounded soldier at a time. The fire died to embers, stars emerged in the Colorado sky, and in the shadows where heroes did their finest work, the healing continued. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and become a part of our everyday life. Stories community, where are you watching from? Drop a comment below. We love hearing from our amazing viewers around the world.